How's it going, Deepak?
Very good, sir. How you doing?
Great. Where are you calling in from? Just so everybody knows.
Oh, oh,
Oh, you're at home and
I'm at home. Yeah,
in Edmonton, right?
that's right, sir.
Great. So, if you can start here, introduction. If somebody hasn't seen you on the podcast or at any of the events, can you share who you are, where your practice is at, and exactly where you're at in the world?
Perfect. Yeah. So, hey, everybody. My name is Deepak Sharma. I'm the founder of Primus Physiotherapy. Um, I have a small, thriving practice, which is around like 1,700 square foot of space. And yeah, I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And yeah, been practicing for almost 17 years, but started this practice in 2018.
Great. So I know you had a unique story. You flew here to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, this very office, back in early 2021. Can you talk a little bit about where you were at in your practice life? I know you were working a lot, you were treating a lot. And even before we get into the quarantine conversation, the forced quarantine, like why did you fly here? Because it was certainly a uncertain time in the world to be hopping on a plane and flying to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Harrisburg. Yeah. So when we opened the practice in 2018, like we the whole story where we within 3 months we break even, and then within like 2 years mark we hit the ceiling. Like we couldn't see any more patients. We were open 7 days a week and all of that stuff. And then we were in a I was really looking to expand, even though I was working almost 70, 80 hours a week at that time. So there was a bank space in our shopping plaza that got vacated, and there was like a 5,000 square foot space. I had some things look pretty lucrative, but as a human being, we don't know when to say no. So for me, it was like I literally called my realtor, like, hey, can you please inquire about this location and stuff like that? I'll be more than interested in taking over this. And then, but then when I was having a conversation with my wife, so I think we sat down and we kind of started chatting about it, and she kind of put those words back in my head again, like, hey, do you really want to still work 80 hours a week? Why don't you go back and look at your business plan that you wrote, before you open the business? And then I was in a bit of a dilemma to kind of whether to go with this, sign another lease that would cost me another $30,000 monthly rent or something like that. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm not able to make that decision. I know who can help me think through it, and the rest is the story. So I flew down to you. Yeah.
Awesome. So just to summarize there, you were already treating 80 hours a week.
Right.
You were in original clinic is 1,700 square feet, correct?
Right. Yeah.
In Edmonton. And just for context, your average plan of care is about $400 per plan of care in
That's
Canada, right?
Yeah.
So working a ton. You had, I think, 3 or 4 other physios working with you at the
Right.
time, and then you were thinking about adding 5,000 square feet, which was the rent is $60 a
30,
square
30.
foot, right?
That's right. Yeah. So it was another $30,000 a month, kind of approximately $36,000.
Yeah. That's a lot. So big decision. And so you came here, we talked about it. I think we even recorded a podcast episode at that time of how you were thinking through that. And then when you went back, the quarantine laws changed and you had to quarantine for 15 days. Can you talk through that experience for everybody? Because most of us would love to be forced not to work in our business so that we actually think about our business and our practice for a second. Can you talk about that experience?
Sure. So yeah, when I got back, I landed at the airport, and so the regulations were different. But I reached home like early in the morning at around like 2 a.m. or something. And then overnight, the next day, I got a call from the Canada Border Security Agency saying overnight the laws have been changed and now you have to quarantine at home for 2 weeks. Like, great. It could never be anything like, yeah, it's like kind of a blessing in disguise. Yeah, so I think I just used that time in my my favor, where like, okay, this cannot be anything better than this. I anyways had a plan to slow down, but this kind of came as a blessing to me. And so what I did was I called my admin in the clinic, and we do these weekly staff meetings. So I had a weekly staff meeting. I told the plan to kind of all the team members, had a separate conversation with admin that, hey, I won't be coming back to the clinic. And even from here on, when I'll come back, I'll only treat patients 2 days a week. Like, hey, get a list of all my clients and start making those phone calls and start transitioning them to other therapists. And anybody who would, kind of give you some resistance, make a note of their name and their phone number, and send a text to me or send me a list via email, and I'll talk to them. So there were not very many people who showed any resistance, because the way the admin communicated things, I think it worked out perfectly. And then some people, I think there were like 18-20% of people who showed some resistance. So I was sitting at home and I was just making phone calls, and I was like, hey, this is where I am. And I think at this point, my time and expertise or my energy is well spent on running the business and making sure you're still getting the same quality treatment that you know us for. And like, yeah, you go and see this person, I'll make sure that you get the same treatment, and I'll still be supervising the treatment planning and stuff like that. So it was an easy transition, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about, great. What most mere mortals of us do when we first step out of treatment and we decrease our hours, we know that we want to go from working in the business, treating, to working on the business. Can you talk through any mental barriers that you had in the first month or two? How did you fill your time? Because, to go from 80 hours a week in the clinic treating 7 days a week, and then all of a sudden you're working on the business, most of us don't know how to fill that time. And we easily matriculate back to, the first time that there's a patient who only wants to see us, we accommodate them. And then, well, I'll just work from 8 a.m. until lunch, and then I'll work on the business. But quickly it expands back. Can you talk about any of the barriers, any of the setbacks that you had, and how you mentally work through that?
Sure, sir. So I'll answer it in two parts. So first part is when you have so much of time in your hand, when you're working 80 hours a week, and now you're only treating patients like say 10, 12 hours a week back in 2021, you become a lazy bum. Right, happens with everybody. I don't know. At least it happened with me. So for me, I started enjoying that freedom. And I was like, man, this is great. So the business didn't crash, because of that smooth transition. So I started spending a lot of time at home. I was like, okay, I'll wake up at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and then some other day I was like, okay, I'm not going to the clinic because I don't have any patients to treat. But that's why you have family to make you realize, this is not right. And so pretty soon my wife made me realize that this is not good. I don't like you staying home. Yeah. So you should go, go to work. So I kind of came to that. Pretty soon I had that realization within a month or so. And now the second part of it, when I again start going back to the clinic. So even though I was not treating patients 5 days a week or 7 days a week, I was still in the clinic 5 days a week, and I was treating patients just maybe 1 or 2 days a week. And what I was doing was there was still a lot of patients calling in, because when the admin made the phone calls, when I made the phone call, that was my current client base list. But the people that I've treated in the past, or the referrals that they've been making to the clinic, and they're like, okay, I need to, see Deepak, and the staff would try and convince them, hey, he's not taking patients and stuff like that, but he can we can make sure that he's present for your initial evaluation, but you'll be booked with one of his associates. So when the patient used to come, and I used to, my office is right next to the admin, the reception. So it's easy for me to hear those conversations. And if I see even the slightest change that I feel that we need to make, I would go at the front and just tell them, hey, let's talk, communicate it this way. And then when so that patient used to come and, they were booked with another therapist, but I was there, so I would just go in and say, hey, John, how you doing? It's been a while seeing you. Thanks for still trusting us with your, aches and pains and this and that. Make some small talks, and hey, for example, Harsh was there. Harsh is, is much better therapist than what I was. So you are in real good hands. I trust him more than I would trust my clinical understanding. So that kind of creates build a trust factor. Because I think if you really think about it, Chad, is the trust that brings those patients back to you, nothing else. At least for me, that's what it looks like. So if you can start imbibing the same trust what the patient has on you, and you imbibe the same trust on the therapist, and kind of build that bridge in between, there is no reason why they would not trust the therapist and would not be ready to take the treatment. Honestly, I've not had a single patient in the last 2 years who have refused me or said, okay, no, if you're not treating me, I'm not coming to your clinic. I've not even had a single patient like that.
That's great. So it sounds like from front to back of your clinic, you're empowering everybody. So you're involved, you're looking at what is happening in reception and likely billing or, revenue cycle. You're also paying attention to what's going on within your clinic with your therapist. You mentioned Hirsch as well. So when you're thinking about your week and how you're organizing your week because your wife kicked you out of your house, which is exactly what Stephanie did with me. So when you're thinking through that, how do you organize your week so that you're making sure that you're touching all of your key players and making sure that you're supporting them in the way that they need supported to do their role?
Right. So, and again, I'll go back to our sessions that we had in Harrisburg when I flew down in January of 2021. Where you kind of helped me understand, what are the pillars of a practice or any business, right? It's you have your your marketing, you have your personnel, you have your finance, and then you have your admin team. So I kind of took a note of that, and now okay, we have these 4 pillars of our practice. So really, what all I'm doing now, or what I was doing before then too, is just kind of sit down and look into all those areas separately, right? If it is admin, okay, what tools they need to do their job right? Or so I would sit down and listen to their conversations that they've been having with the patients. So I'm spending a lot of time working on the business rather than treating patients. And trust me, there are days where you do feel overwhelmed, that you think that treating patients is being it's overwhelming, but managing is much more can be overwhelming if you don't have your systems and processes in place. So it's just one of those things that you always say, Chad, that we can have strong systems in place, but if you don't have processes to implement those systems, those systems are of no use. So it's literally, that's what exactly I did. Got a bit more disciplined, sat down every day, looked into these 4 areas every day, and see where I can help them out, where I can develop them. If they need some sort of training, I'll find those training stuff and then go and talk to them. Hey, let's for example, for admin team, okay, let's go through these trainings and then see if that helps you. Or I would sit down with them and just go through the things. Same thing we do with the clinical staff, because it's really important when you step out of the clinical side of the things, you need to make sure that the treatment efficacy or efficiency that or effectiveness you're known for, that your clinical team can still maintain the same standards. So I used to do weekly mentorship sessions with my team. Every week we used to block off 45 minutes to an hour time. But I would sit down, go over different cases and stuff like that. So it's basically empower them. And if they come to you with something, sure, but help them find the solution to the problems rather than you like feed them constantly with the solutions.
Right. So
Yeah.
the theme for our patient demand summit here is around profitability. And Heather asked a great question here. She said, financially, what was the load like to transfer from you seeing patients to having your staff do more? And I'll give you a little bit of context. Most of us as owners, we perceive that when I stop treating, we're going to take a huge hit in revenue or profitability. So can you talk about what, the profit margins of your practice, how healthy you were, how viable you were in 2021, and then where you're at today as you made that transition out of working in the business all the time?
Right. So I'll talk about the transition phase first, and then the overall profit stuff. So during that transition phase, so it was, I think, January 19 when was the last time I actually treated a full caseloader. So from there on, I've never seen a drop in our monthly caseload. So and then, compoundingly over the year too, I've never seen anything. It just, I think you just have to make sure that you have a process to make that transition, right? Sometimes if you think that, hey, you're going to stop treating patients tomorrow and you don't have anybody else to take over that caseload, then there is a problem, right? With me, so I've never had touch wood, whether you call it being lucky or being blessed or whatever it is, I never saw a decline in the revenue side of the things. Sure, when you are treating patients by yourself, whatever money revenue you're generating, you take that money home. So that's like a pure profit for you, right? But when you're basically having your staff members treating patients, so you do see a decline in that profit margins. But really, for me, that profit margins, we have grown year after year since 2018. We haven't seen, touch with a decline in our revenue or profit margins since 2018, since our inception. Sure, there were times when I have seen around 33% profit margins in a year, but we have been consistently maintaining, even after hitting the ceiling in 2021, where we could not see many more patients, we are still maintaining healthy profit margins of 20 to 22%. Yeah, even during the COVID, we still gained a lot of profit.
That's great. So Mark asked, it sounds like you're transferring authority and trusting to your other FTEs or adhesion to the systems. It's two separate comments. Is there one of those that you focused more than the other? So is it like people empowerment, or is it making sure that they focus on the systems or adhere to the systems, or are they both the same?
So I think it's the two sides of the same coin, right? Chad, is and again, how you put things, we are when you're treating patients, you're a dragon slayer. And, if you want to become a master of the dragon slayers, what comes in between is your ego, right? Most of us, we think, human beings are screwed up emotional people. So we always think, and again, being a practice owner and being a clinical practitioner, I can tell you, we always, most of us at least, we have this mindset that nobody is better than us, and we can't, nobody can treat my patients or our patients walking to the clinic better than me. Right. And I think that's where the ego kind of plays a role in there. And we stop delegating things to our staff members, and we only give them the information that they need to do their job. But I found that, after we had those conversations and sessions, that the sooner you start delegating things and sooner you start empowering them and shower your trust on your therapist, they trust you more. And that kind of helped me. And on the same side, on the other hand, basically, you empowered your trust so that, think of it this way: if you have a kid, you go and tell them, hey, the kid comes to you and they're trying to do something. You go and stop them and say, hey, you can't do this. You'll fall and you'll hurt yourself and blah blah blah. the kid, will definitely going to fall and hurt himself. If you, this on the other hand, if you go and talk to the kid, hey, these are the pros and cons of what can happen if you don't, say, ride your bike properly, but I have full trust in you. Do this, keep your eyes on the road, look where you're going, and just pedal. There's less likely chance for that kid to learn faster, or like to fall and learn faster, I guess. So that's I think there's the two sides of the same coin, Chad.
Got it. One more question here, and while I'm asking this question from Andrea, if everybody can give Deepak some love, recognition, and acknowledgement here in the chat, that would be great. I definitely went through a pretty amazing change here the last year or two. Andrea asked if all therapists are fully booked and the owner needs to work less due to health reasons, etc., how would one transition and keep profit up?
So if the therapists are full and you need to transition, then I think the simple answer is hire more therapists.
Yeah, replace yourself in the clinic, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think the second thing I would say is just have an open conversation with your therapist, that, hey, this is what's going on with me. I think, and that's one of the other things that people think they don't want to share a lot with their team. Like they hide a lot of things within themselves, and they don't share things. And if they don't and if with an assumption that either they'll take away your secrets or they would not understand and stuff. But I think open yourself to your team, talk to them, be honest with them. Hey, this is where we are. This is what's going on, and I want you all to pull up a little slack here. And even if if you have, like, say, a team of 4 therapists and you are the 5th pillar in there, ask them to take another, say, hey, can you treat an hour more every day, or an hour more every week? That gives you another 5-6 hours a week. So that kind of covers up some of the revenue loss that you may get hit with. And then in the meantime, start hiring somebody else.
Yeah, I lied. We're going to do one more question since I saw a good one come in from Mark here. How do you not get sucked back in to treat again? If you would, lose, for example, like, have you lost an FTE? How would you not get sucked back in?
So it will happen, but again, as I said, like, the delegation is the important part. So what I did was, when I was stepping down, I made sure that I'm promoting another staff to the CD level, or the clinic director level. And now it's not your headache how the operations are getting done in the clinic. It is to some extent, because you have your skin in the game and it's your money at stake. But I think you will feel that urge to, I need to go in and start treating patients again, otherwise I'll lose this much of revenue. Whereas if you sit down with your clinic director or the next in command, and it's like, hey, this is where we are. It's very easy to go into that slippery slope, but don't do that. Once a while is okay. Like, I did it around the Christmas time. I tell you, Chad, where I was like, last whole year, I was in the whole 1 year where we did over $1 million revenue. My contribution to the clinic was $5,000. I literally treated patients 5,000, and that does not even attribute to 6 hours a week. That's like probably nothing. But around the Christmas time, my staff was like, they needed some time off, and there was just, the dynamics was so that I needed to step in. So I did that for a week. I treated patients for 4 days during the holiday time. But then there was a very clear understanding that, hey, it's a short period, and it cannot be a lifelong process. Like, you can't keep doing it, stop treating patients, then go back again and start treating patients again for 1 year. So I think it's just more of conversation that you need to have with the second in command and with your staff members.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate everything you're doing, Deepak. And I know you've overcome a lot the last few years, have had an amazing run as a practice owner. So thank you again for being here and sharing your journey. I appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Deepak.